Welcome, football fans, to Saturday Showdown, the ultimate touchdown for your college football fix. Each week, we'll dive into the hottest games, standout players, and pivotal moments that define the season. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just tuning in for the first time, we got all the stats, stories, and insights to keep you at the top of your game. So grab your favorite snack, get comfy. It's time to kick off another episode of Saturday Showdown.
Welcome back into Saturday Showdown to talk week 5 of college football. And what a weekend of college football it was, with the excitement getting started on Friday night with a crazy Miami-Virginia Tech game that initially came down to a questionable call at the end. You know, what were your thoughts on that call there, Dylan?
Listen, do I think he caught the ball successfully? No. Obviously, there's a lot of movement going on, right? You have to have college and those aspects, right? College, it's almost like the NFL when it comes to like certain things, right? I mean, you have to show control the ball, right? You can't just catch it, hit the ground, you move the ball, it doesn't. None of that counts, right? You have to show full control of the ball, just like you do in the NFL, right? College and the NFL are same in that aspect. Do I think he caught it? No. I mean, you can clearly see it, right? Move around. But the thing is, though, is that there wasn't enough video evidence to show that he didn't hold on to the ball long enough. And you made the call as a touchdown. Like you made that, right? So when I said college and the NFL share the same type of rules, that's a rule that they share, right? You have to have undeniable proof to overturn the call once you make it, right? Once you make that initial call, that's it. The only thing that can overturn that, right, is enough video evidence. And my eyes, there was not enough there. Once you made that call, there wasn't enough there to show that he didn't, right? Because it'd be, like I said, I don't think he caught the ball and held on to it with enough control. But the thing is that the guy who pushed the ball out of his hands was already out of play. So that guy's out of play. So that'd be a second effort on the ball, which he cannot make, right? Once you're out of bounds, you cannot be the first person to touch the ball, which that he was. And they made that call, and I think you have to stick by it, and they did not. And no offense to Hurricane fans anywhere, but I feel like that was just a call to try to have the ACC keep relevant, because Miami is the only one doing anything. I mean, in my eyes, that was a dirty call, 100%. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that Virginia scored that touchdown. I mean, no doubt in my mind. Not because I think he actually had the touchdown, but like I said, again, you made the call, right? You made it. There wasn't anything to overturn it. Once you made that call, that was it. That should have been game right there. I mean, that should have been for Virginia. And I mean, that was, in my eyes, that was a terrible job of the refs, not sticking by what they initially made.
Yeah, that's a tough one because, like you said, once they called it a touchdown, I was surprised they even called it a touchdown to begin with, just like you said, because there was no really visible of him catching the ball with all that jumbled mess. But like you said, when they initially called it a touchdown, there, like you said, there wasn't really enough to, I guess, justify overturning it. But at the end of the day, like you said, Virginia Tech, that they brought it all to Miami. They played them to the very last minute of this game. I mean, and it's not like Miami even necessarily had a bad game either. I mean, you look at Cam Ward, 24 of 38, 343 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did have 2 turnovers, though. So, there was a lot of just no defense in this game. Lots of scoring, drones for Virginia Tech, 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. They had 141 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown. Cam Ward had to touch him himself on the ground, 57 yards rushing. So this is just a back-and-forth game where lack of defense, and then games should never be decided by the refs, and that's what we had happen.
Yeah, and like I said, once you made that call, right, I mean, it's no different than the NFL. Once you make the call, that's the call that stands on the field. You can go back and look at video evidence, but there is no just changing your mind, right? You have to have something that physically shows that call that you made was wrong. And I understand when you go back and look at the video, right, you can see him jumble the ball. but the guy who created the ball to come loose, you can see from his waist up is out of play, which means he cannot touch the ball, right? So once you say touchdown and you look at that and you see the guy, in my eyes, once you see the guy that caused the ball to come out was out of play, the call should have still stood as a touchdown. I think it was the wrong call to begin with. Don't get me wrong, because even that guy knows he didn't have full control of the ball. But the way it shows is the guy who calls the ball to start moving was not in play at all. Because you could see him come down with the ball, but everything started getting loose the moment he hit the ground. And like I said, again, the guy who calls all that was out of play already. I don't see how you could make the call and then switch on it like that, because there was nothing there. Even if you were watching the game, even the announcers were saying, like, you made the call as a touchdown. It needs to stick that way. And it didn't. And unfortunately, because that should have been a walk-off for Virginia Tech, without a doubt. So I feel bad for the guys because they played it out. And then, like you said, refs should never decide a game ever. And that's like the worst thing you could do. Or the worst thing that could have happen to you is the ref decide a game for you. But also at the end of the day, as a football team, right, you shouldn't let it get down to that.
You shouldn't have to depend on a call one way or another to dictate whether you're winning that game or not. So
props to Miami for winning, even though honestly they shouldn't have because of the call. But like I said, don't put yourself in that position, and you won't have to worry about a ref making a bad call like that. But I do think this is just another example that refs, they need to make better calls, obviously, as well too, because that was, once you made that call, you should have stuck by it. So, but
yeah,
it was like you said, Virginia brought it straight to him. I didn't see that coming at all.
Not at all. No,
I thought it was going to be a clobbering.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's college football. It's been crazy. So I don't know.
Yeah, talking about crazy, we continue on talking about this. Michigan somehow wins another game, 27-24 over Minnesota with 86 passing yards. 86. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Dylan, how do they keep pulling this off?
Because everyone is terrible. Every team is awful that faces these guys. I don't mean like, Minnesota put up a really good fight, right? It was, what was that, a 3-point game? 27-24. But for the love of God, right? When listen, I could go in right now and I guarantee you I could throw it for more than 86 yards. I promise you. Let me throw screen passes all game, and I promise you I could throw for more than 86 yards. It may take me 50 throws, but I promise you I could do it. The fact that people know these guys cannot throw a ball, right? And they're not loading the box every play blows my mind. Blows my mind. I understand you have Mulligan. Is that his last name?
Yeah, Mullings.
Mullings. And then you have Edwards, right? Who's been a letdown this year. But that's like a two-headed horse, right? Edwards still gets carries a game. He's not the player he was.
He's definitely the second guy there, because you look at the carry ratio. Mullings 24 carries, Edwards 9. Yeah,
so it's almost he's almost been put in the same situation when Blake Corum was there, which I think we all expected it to be vice versa, but it's not. But anyways, I don't know. They just keep running the ball. No one loads the box because they think that they're just going to be able to stop the run. But Michigan's a good running football team. They have been for the last handful of years, even when they weren't very good. They've been a very good running team. So, I don't know. I don't know how you can watch game film and watch these guys run for 200 yards and pass for 30 against US. You pass for 30 yards and run for 200. And then you watch that game film as Minnesota, and your instinct is to not load the box every play. It blows my mind. I understand you're probably going to get burnt, right, on some plays if you load the box every play. But he's thrown for like 130 yards total in 2 games.
But it's like, yeah, if I'm playing against Michigan, I'm taking that risk because, like you said, 130 yards between 2 games. Sure, I'll let you have a big play or two if you flat out beat me by throwing the ball like that. But I'm risking that because it's like clearly they can't pass it.
Yeah,
And
I don't know how you're not. I don't know how these teams aren't doing that. You're watching game. This would have to be the easiest game film you could ever watch, because their defense is giving up. They're giving up 27 points, 24 plus points a game, right? And they're literally doing nothing but running the ball. I mean, nothing but running the ball. They don't do anything else. And I don't understand how a team doesn't look at this and say, okay, we're going to load the box, or I'm going to blitz every single down. So I'm bringing the heat every play. But, I mean, I'm not saying teams aren't loading the box, but they're not doing it. They're not doing it consistently all game. I think they're worried about being burnt. And listen, the kid's a college quarterback. I'm sure he can throw a deep ball. But in 2 straight games, he hasn't done that at all. I mean, 0. So, I don't know. To answer your question, I don't know how they're winning. I have no idea.
I'd say the longest pass on the day was 16 yards.
So I have no idea. I don't know if it's because they're that good of a running team, or other teams are just terrible defensively. Because if you're getting beat all game by a single play, like all they're doing is running up the middle, you should probably be fired. I mean, I don't understand how you're losing. I really don't. I'm not saying they're not a good team, but Michigan truly, at least this year, is not an overall solid team.
Yeah, I agree there. There's a glaring issue, yet unless the talent level on that team is just that much higher than the other, which I don't think it really is. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're rushing for – Mullins had 111 yards for 2 touchdowns. You had Edwards 34 yards, Orgy 12 yards for, 155 total yards on the day. Orgy does manage to throws a touchdown pass with those 86 yards, but also throws an interception. So you got a turnover right there. And then on the other side of the ball, you have Minnesota, 258 yards through the air, threw it 40 times, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, whereas Michigan, 18 passes. That was it. They rushed the ball 43 times.
It's like 2 games in a row. That's all they're doing. I don't know. I'm so confused. I mean, this has been the weirdest college football year I've seen in a long time. Like, good teams are struggling really bad. We've had a lot of good teams lose to terrible teams. And I don't say terrible as in like the talent's just lesser, right? And then you have Michigan, who is, in my eyes, and this is biased 100%. They're a terrible. I hate them. They're awful. But they're winning by doing the same thing every play. Like, they run 10 times in a row, and then they throw a pass for 5 yards. And then they run 10 times in a row, and then they throw a pass for 5 yards. And they're winning football games. I mean, I cannot not give them props, because that's so impressive to me that you're able to beat anybody by just handing the ball off every play. And that's all they're doing. Like you said, they ran 43 times, is that what you said? And they're winning. That's all they're doing is handing the ball off. So props to Michigan, because I don't care who you are. That's incredible that you can win a football game 2 in a row, nonetheless.
Just lining up, and running it.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's going to come to an end fairly shortly once they start.
It's got to, right?
Because they're going to play someone who can score and has a defense, and it's just not going to work out well. But I've said that 2 weeks in a row, and they've done the same thing 2 weeks in a row, and they've came out victorious 2 weeks in a row. So I don't know. I have no clue.
Yeah. As we continue on here, the BYU Cougars are 5-0 and staring down the potential for a Big 12 championship. As they took care of Baylor 34-28. They went up big early in this game. They were up 31-14 at one point. They let Baylor score an additional 14 points to make it a little bit closer of a game. But, they come out, they look good. Their quarterback, Rhett Slaff, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. He also is their leading rusher with 53 yards on 6 carries for a touchdown. On the other side of the ball, Baylor, 324 yards, three touchdowns, 2 interceptions by Sawyer Robinson, their quarterback. He also runs a score in. So this was a battle of the dual threat quarterbacks here. And BYU comes on top. They almost let it get away at the end there with, Baylor making this a 6-point game, but they managed to win. And, they're sitting nice and high up in the Big 12 standings right now.
Yeah, BYU has been impressive. I think I said this 2 weeks ago. I mean, they haven't been relevant since Zach Wilson was there. I think that's what he played for. So, I mean, and they were decently good when he was there. So, I mean, credit to them because these guys are playing over. I mean, it's not just like a one-sided football game. Like they're playing, like you said, before they let it, they let this game kind of get out of hand in their way. I mean, they still came out victorious, but they've been playing like overall football, both sides of the ball, like very well. So, I mean, the turnovers got to stop. Obviously, they had 2 interceptions thrown, but I mean, overall, they're doing a great job, both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively. So if they can stop the turnovers, I mean, they're going to be a hard team to beat. Any team like a BYU who's hot and just keeps rolling. I mean, I don't care what conference you play in, right? I mean, you could be really hard to beat if you just kind of keep it moving and keep it rolling. So,
I was about to say, yeah, and I was about to say, you look at their schedule, and there's the rest of their schedule is not extremely tough. You've got Arizona, which they just got the big win over Utah, but then you got Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State just got beat by Kansas State 2 weeks in a row, a loss. You got UCF, Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, and Houston. That is a very nice schedule for them to round out the rest of this the second half of the season. And I could see them, winning most of those games.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because this is where I think the 12-team college playoff kind of brings like a little bit of a problem. Because if you get a team, not necessarily like a BYU, because they've had a handful of like really good years. But you get a team like them, right, who started off really bad, like, unranked, not a very good team. They don't play in the toughest of conferences, right? You start getting teams like them that are going like undefeated, that don't have like a hard schedule. You're going to see a lot of those teams, I mean, either get ousted like Florida State did last year, or you're going to see them get in. And, that could create – I mean, listen, I'm not trying to ramble on too much, but if you get a team out of the Mountain West that goes undefeated, right, and they get like a 12 seed and they play like an Alabama, I mean, that's not going to be fair. I mean, or they play Georgia or they play Texas. I mean, you're going to get hammered. Those are 2 different types of football, way 2 different types of football, right? SEC play compared to, what these guys play is different. So I don't think they should be ousted at all, but credit to them because, like you said, their schedule is not the hardest and they're on fire. And there's not a game that you read off that I don't think that they could win. And I'll say this about anybody. If you go undefeated, I don't really see how you can not get a spot. I don't care what conference you play in. I know it could create for bad football, but I mean, if they go undefeated, how could you deny them?
Yeah, that's very true. I agree. I mean, and like you mentioned it, let's just take a trip over to the Mountain West. Boise State gets the win over Washington State, 45-24. But the storyline here is not that Boise State wins. Ashton Jeanty should be considered a serious Heisman contender. I know they play in the Mountain West, but the man is just eating all season. This game, 26 carries, 259 yards, 4 touchdowns. 4.
Twice now. That's 2 games this year where he has 4+ touchdowns in a game. I'm going to read you guys his 2024, obviously regular season stats through 4 games. This is through 4 games, guys. That's it. And I understand, right? They don't play the toughest of teams, but keep in mind they did play Oregon, and he ran. I mean, he put some yardage on Oregon too. So it's not like he can't do this against good teams, right? And college football, I don't really. I mean, they're teams. I mean, you play college football for a reason. 82 carries, 845 yards, 13 touchdowns, and he's averaging basically 10.5 yards a carry. Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you, Caleb. In my eyes, no one on here can say anything to convince me right now that the Heisman is not down to 2 people. And one of them we're going to talk about later, but we're talking about this one now. In my eyes, it's between Jonty and Milroe. In my eyes, that's it right now. I mean, I don't care. This guy has 13 touchdowns in 4 games. That is absurd, dude. And he's running. I mean, he's just running the ball for almost 1,000 yards already.
I was about to say, and he's not the biggest of guys either. He's 5'9", 215.
Like, I want you guys to let that sink in. He has less than 100 carries, and he's about 150 yards away from having 1,000 yards rushing on the season.
Halfway.
Yeah, like he's gonna play. I mean, let's just keep it going. I mean, next week he's gonna have over 1,000 yards rushing in 5 games. I mean, you're only halfway through the season at that point in time. If he would keep this up all game, technically you're talking like 2,000 yards rushing, like the pace that he's on right now.
I was about to say, because you look at it too, Boise State's playing Utah State, who is 1-3.
Like he's gonna put up 200 yards. I mean, he's going over 1,000 yards rushing. I don't see how. I mean, if he keeps this up, guys, like you guys realize, like he is on a path for like 2,000 yards rushing, like in a season. Like halfway through, he's gonna have 1,000 yards halfway through the season. That's I mean, we're kind of seeing something we haven't seen in a long time. We're seeing something we might never see. I mean, maybe that we haven't seen before, because that's absurd, dude. Almost
It is.
1,000. I mean, 13 touchdowns is crazy for a running back halfway through
I
the
was
season.
about to say, and I'll be interested to see with these stats, like what does at the end of the year, what does his draft stock look like? Will he be taken higher than the normal running back range of kind of mid-second round or later, or will he sneak into and be a first-round running back pick? I mean, you don't see that often nowadays, but with stats like this and a player like this, how do you not, if you're in need for a guy to be in your backfield, how do you not try to get this guy on your team?
Chubb had 2,000 yards at OK State and didn't win the Heisman. Yeah, that's absurd.
Well,
That's absurd.
the question is, who was he competing against for the Heisman, though?
Milroe, and that kid's a psychopath. I know we're going to talk about him later, but that's all I see. Jonty is Chubba. I don't know who Chubba. I don't know who.
That's what I was going to see.
Yeah, who did he lose to?
He was in the voting with. Oh, that makes sense. He finished 8th in Heisman voting, but he was in the same with Joe Burrow.
Oh, okay. Well, you're probably. I mean, you probably were never going to win that. He probably could have rushed for 3,000 yards and probably wasn't going to win that.
Yeah, the voting was Joe Burrow in first, Jalen Hurts in second, Justin Fields in third.
Yeah, but I mean, still to have 2,000 yards and to finish 8th, that's crazy, dude.
You also he was also behind J.K. Dobbins.
Now, 2,000 yards. I would like to know 2,000 yards total. Like, or did he have 2,000 yards rushing? Not like, was that 2,000 yards total?
He finished the season with 1,936 yards, 21 rushing touchdowns, and had averaged 161.3 yards per game.
Okay, so he had a little under 2,000 yards. This kid, he had 21 touchdowns. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, this kid is 4 games through the season and has 13. He is literally 8 touchdowns off. I mean, if he keeps going that way, I mean, he's going to beat that. But that is still crazy to have 1,900 yards rushing in the season and finish 8th is absolutely crazy. But I guess it all just depends what draft or what class you're into. I mean, the fact that he had all those guys in there, that kind of sucks, you know.
Yeah.
But he has a good chance to win. Jonty has a good chance to win. There's not a crazy amount of guys, you know, that I think are doing crazy.
Yeah, you can't forget about Cam Ward as well. Cam Ward's been balling out at Miami. I feel like that's got to be your top 3: Milroe, Ward, and Jonty.
Yeah, I would like to. I mean, in my eyes, you can make an argument for Cam Ward, but with what Jalen Milroe just did to Georgia by himself, basically, like if it wasn't for him, they're not winning that game. I mean, that's outrageous.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what he did was Jalen Milroe has really came into himself this year. So I was a little worried, but Jalen Milrose, he's the real deal. But I would say those are the top three.
100%. Yeah, and we'll get to that game here in just a minute. We'll jump over here. Your Ohio State Buckeyes get the job done against Michigan State 38-7. Will Howard, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. You had Travion Henderson, 69 yards, Quinshon Judkins, 54 yards, split, like we expected, like we talked about, two-headed monster there. No touchdowns for those guys. But are you still happy with what you're seeing, with what these guys are doing?
I was a little watching the Michigan State game. I was a little worried because for a while there was only 17-7, and Will Howard wasn't really. He kind of had a little bit. He had kind of had a little bit of an off day. I felt like he picked it up in the second half, but that first half he looked a little. I don't know, slow, a little rusty. I'm glad we have that two-headed monster. But that's the first time our running games kind of got shut down too. I mean, 69 yards off of 7 carries, 54 yards off of 11. Against a Michigan State team that doesn't particularly have the best defense or offense. I don't know. I'm still happy. We're still winning. We still have overall, in my eyes, I think we have one of the best teams right now. Obviously, we're ranked third, but I just think in general, I think because of how good our defense is and how good our offense is, I feel like we can keep up with a lot of teams. And I don't think there's a lot of teams that are specifically good on both sides of the ball. I feel like they're more upper-handed, on the offensive side. But I don't know. I hope we don't play that game. I hope we don't play a game like that against a Michigan or Oregon or Penn State, because if we play like that against those guys, I don't know if it'll go the way that I want. So I'm still happy, but I was a little concerned about the performance to start. They picked it up second half, but hopefully we can kind of just keep the ball rolling.
Yeah. As we jump over, highlight a couple of upsets before we talk about the game that we've all know that we're going to talk about here in a minute. Kentucky upsets Ole Miss 20-17. They took Georgia to the wire 2 weeks ago. They beat Ole Miss. Could Kentucky be a little bit better than what people are thinking they are? Or does that slide some doubt in for Ole Miss?
I mean, Ole Miss is going to take a hurting on the rankings. They're going to take a little bit of a hurting. I think the AP poll has them at 12 right now, so they're in the dead last spot for college football, playoff berth. I don't know. I mean, to do it 2 games in a row, I know they didn't win against Georgia, but they should have, because I don't care what anybody says again, that was an interception return for a touchdown, and that would have been it. So, I mean, they've done it back-to-back games against the number 1 at the time and the number 6 at this time, I think is what Ole Miss was before they lost. So, and those are 2 really tough teams. Like, where the offense is particularly good and the defense might be even a little bit better. So, to do it 2 games in a row, I mean, that's impressive. I don't necessarily know if they're like, I think they're better than what we think they are. Obviously, right? I mean, to do this to 2 top 6 teams.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it and you break down the rest of their schedule. This week, they got a bye week. Then they have Vanderbilt, Florida, Auburn. That should be a 3-0 stretch right there. Then they get one of their next toughest games at Tennessee. So tough road game. Murray State at home, at Texas. So those are 2 games that might worry me. But if they can play like they did against Georgia and Ole Miss, who knows? And then round out the season with their rivalry game against Louisville.
Yeah, I mean, if they keep playing like they've been playing, they're going to be a hard team to beat, because they've been taking really good care of the football and in terms of time of possession. I mean, they held the ball for almost 40 minutes this game. Ole Miss had the ball for they had the ball for barely 20 minutes. Barely 20 minutes. So, 4 for 16 on third down, 3 for 3 on third down. They ran 75 total plays to Ole Miss's 56. But what killed them is they had no turnovers, but they punted the ball 6 times. That'll get you almost as much as turnovers will.
Yeah.
So Ole Miss had they punted 5 times and had a fumble. But Ole Miss was very unorthodox this game. They went 1 of 10 on third down, 2 of 2 on fourth down. They only ran 56 plays, punted 5 times, had a fumble, only had the ball for 20 minutes and 17 seconds, and had 8 penalties compared to Kentucky's 3. So it's they were a very undisciplined football team. They could barely run the ball. They could barely run the ball. If it wasn't for their defense, if their offense could have stepped up a little bit more, they might have been able to win this game, but they couldn't run the ball. And usually, they can do a little bit of both on both sides, and they kind of got shut down this game. So,
yeah, that's true. You jump over the other big upset this weekend. Arizona beats number 10 Utah. Arizona, they've been a team that I don't know necessarily how to feel about them because they're 3-1. They win 23-10. 197 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 169 rushing yards on the day. They hold Utah to 84 yards rushing on 29 carries, 2.9 yards a carry, 280 yards through the air for Utah, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. So defensively, Arizona State looks to be a pretty tough team this year. I'll be interested to see what the rest of their schedule holds. What do they look like throughout the rest of their schedule? Because they've still got to play this BYU team. They've still got to play Colorado. They still got to play on the road at UCF. So they've still got some tough games to play. But, could this be another one of those teams that they're sitting 4th in the Big 12 right now at 3-1? Do you think you might have to watch for them towards the end of the season?
Maybe. You could. I'm not going to say, it's so hard to tell when teams have, that talent. But I feel like Arizona has like an inconsistent kind of talent. Like, I feel like they could be a really good football team, but like they've not up to par all the time. So I don't know if I'd necessarily say they're a college football playoff team, but I definitely wouldn't say that if I was facing them, I'd be like, oh, yeah, this is an easy win. I definitely think you better game plan for these guys because whenever they're on the ball, they can play some real football. So I wouldn't say look past them at all.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, do you think if Cam Rising, do you think if he was healthy and playing, do you think it's a different story?
I think possibly. I'm not going to rule it out 100% because you don't know. But with the experience that he brings compared to Isaac Wilson that is a freshman, maybe he doesn't make those 2 interceptions that he did. So, you look at things like that, you could take away some turnovers possibly by, just having that experience and that knowledge and understanding how to read some of those defenses. But it's one of those things that's like you said, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, if Cam Rising plays, they win this game. But it could be a little bit different story, maybe a closer game, not a 13-point game. It could have been, maybe a 1-score game. Who knows? But, yeah, like you said, Arizona's one of those teams that you can't just look past or they'll sneak up on you. Not saying Utah looked past them, but look what happened. Number 10, Utah ranked. They just got beat. So now we'll jump over to the game that was probably the best college football game to watch all season, especially the way it ended. Georgia goes into Alabama. And, if you just watch the first half of this game and just turn it off at halftime because it looks like it's over, you missed an exciting second half because you have a Georgia team that's down 30-7 at the half. 30-7. Carson Beck has an abysmal first half. with the turnovers, Georgia is struggling to get anything going. And it looks like it's over. And, I mean, Georgia puts up 27 points in the second half to bring this right down to the wire. I mean, your initial thoughts on this game?
I mean, yeah. Yeah. It was crazy. Usually we don't get Georgia Alabama football this early. But we did, and it was delightful. And I hate both teams so much very equally. So I had no bias in this game whatsoever. So it was just really good to watch these guys just play hard-nosed, nitty-gritty SEC football. And it was such a delight. Man, Alabama came in hot and heavy. They did, dude. They were laying it down on Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs. And then right before halftime, Georgia scores a touchdown, makes it 30-7. And then if you look at it, right, until that Alabama touchdown, basically Georgia, they basically put like 34 points straight before Alabama scored again. So
those halftime adjustments by Kirby Smart, I mean, I applaud him for being able to shut them down in the second half. I mean, what a way to turn around your defense. But it was a little bit too late. I mean, if you don't let Alabama go up 30-7 at half, say it's 21, 23, 24-7, this might be a different result. But you look at it on both sides. Alabama should not have let a 27-point lead go. But also, on the flip side of that, great job by Kirby Smart to, pull his team together at halftime and say, guys, you're getting your butts kicked out there. Let's, change the second half and see if we can get back into this game. And sure enough, that's what they did. And then right there at the end of the game, you have back-to-back one-score games or one-score plays. And Bama seals it with the interception on Georgia's last play to kind of seal the win in Tuscaloosa. And, I mean, that's a big win for Kalen DeBoer and this, I say new era Bama team. They're still Alabama. But in this new tenure of Kalen DeBoer, you got a statement win right there at home, and that's big.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go a little bit different of a way. I don't think I can't give Georgia any excuses. I understand that they did not play well in the beginning, but they brought it back and they took the lead at one point in time. So now it's an even game. So I can't give them, there's going to be no excuses saying like, well, maybe if you played better in the first half, you wouldn't have lost. Well, all that washed away whenever you went up, right? You took the lead in a crucial moment of the game with like 2 minutes left or whatever it was. I mean, you were winning, right? You were down and then you took the lead by one in one play with a 68-yard touchdown pass. So, I mean, all that doubt washed away. I mean, you took the lead. You overcame the deficit. It's a new game at that point in time. So I think Carson Beck was just awful. I know he threw for 439 yards or whatever, but he made a lot of crucial mistakes that he does not make. And one of them was to a freshman, defensive back or whatever on the last play of the game for them, with, a minute left or whatever it was, or, but I mean, we saw a completely different Carson Beck. We saw flashes of who we've known him to be, and we saw a lot of a guy that we've never seen before, which was awful. I mean, making bad throws, being off time, throwing behind receivers, throwing too high, throwing interceptions, throwing late, making bad reads, not doing checkdowns. I mean, for about 90% of that game, he definitely did not look like the same quarterback that a lot of people thought probably was going to win the Heisman this year. but with the way he played that game, that was not a good look. They're very lucky that they lost that game to Alabama and not a team that was ranked lower, because they would have been completely out of the top 12 in my eyes.
Or
So,
I mean, even walk it back. They're lucky they didn't lose a game to an unranked Kentucky.
yeah, and honestly, they're lucky they brought it back, because even Alabama was ranked number 4. I think a lot of people thought that Georgia was probably the favorite. If you lose that game like 41-7, I mean, that's probably not a good look to go in there and just get absolutely dominated on. So I don't know. They're very lucky they lost to Alabama. They're very lucky, because maybe they're out of the college football playoff picture right now, but they're not. So I don't know. They can't play like that anymore, because if they lose another game, they're going to be out. I don't care, SEC or not. You can't lose 2 games and be in the top. And be in that top 12. There are a lot of teams that have not lost yet. And there's a lot of teams that haven't lost. They don't play anybody good, and there's a lot of teams that could go undefeated. So I don't know. I don't know what you thought, but I thought he looked terrible. And in my eyes, he was a big reason they lost that game. Was his terrible, his playmaking was awful. Now, the defense was bad too, but
I was about to say, you can't be in a quarterback experience as he is and go in there and throw 3 interceptions. I mean, you're just hurting your team. Like you said, he showed flashes down the stretch at the end when he was making those plays to get his team back in the game. But you're not necessarily in that bad of a position if you don't make 3 turnovers either. So, yeah, I agree. Georgia's, they've really got to, look at the rest of the season. They've got a big game October 19th in Austin against Texas that they can't afford to lose. Like you said, a 1-loss team, yeah, they can probably still get in that playoffs, but you're a 2-loss team, like you said, and you have several other teams that are undefeated and up in the rankings. You have your ACC teams and, all your conference winners. I mean, that's not a good look. So we'll see what they do. Kirby Smart almost brought his team back. Kalen DeBoer and that Alabama defense figures out a way to get the stop, like you said, the freshman getting the crucial pick in the end zone on the drive that, was Georgia was trying. So, it's a shame we don't get Alabama versus Texas this year.
Yeah, I mean, never say never. Could happen in the playoffs at some point in time. But yes,
as far as regular season, yes,
I would really like a regular season like that. But I do want to say, I know we talked about, I mentioned earlier, but credit to Jalen Milroe. That kid was unbelievable. After watching last year and how, Nick Saban kind of sat him a few times this season because Nick Saban expects perfection, right? Caleb DeBoer, even with some mistakes that Jalen Milroe had made, right? He only made his first one of the season in this game. And, that was his first interception of the season so far was against Georgia. So he had a few minor mistimed throws, some bad decisions. Luckily, he didn't have more turnovers. But Caleb DeBoer stuck with him, doesn't sit him. Caleb DeBoer understands, he just got to play his game. But, man, they let Jalen Milroe play. 374 yards to the air, 2 touchdowns. And what do you have? He had 117 yards on the ground, something like that.
Yeah.
And another 2 touchdowns. The man had 4 touchdowns against probably the best defense in college football up to this point. I mean, because Georgia's defense has been good for a number of years. But, Georgia's defense is solid.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have that Georgia defense, I don't know if Georgia even gets back in this game. That was a big part of it, was they were able to come out there and get stops. So,
yeah, they were able to shut down Alabama. Like you said earlier, Kirby Smart was able to shut down Alabama big time. I do want to say, I know we're going to switch over, but for everybody who doesn't know, Kirby Smart is 88-6 against anyone he's ever played in college, while he's been at Georgia. 88-6, right? He's 1-6 against Alabama. He's lost 12 games since being at Georgia, and 6 of them have came from Alabama alone. He's 1-6 against Alabama. 1-6. So
I was about to say, it's that Crimson Kryptonite right there.
It is. That is Kirby Smart's kryptonite, is playing Alabama. I mean, he's lost 12 games at Georgia. That's it. And half of them have been to one team. So credit for Caleb
five of those six.
going.
5 of those 6 against Nick Saban.
Yeah. So, I mean, credit to Caleb DeBoer for keeping that going because I think people were kind of curious to see how he was going to do coaching against a really good, technically, the next Nick Saban, because that's kind of what Kirby Smart is right now, right? I mean, he's ridiculously good. So, he didn't get out coached. He didn't get out coached at all. He held his composure. He made the right call. I mean, credit to him for going in there and getting a win against a really solid Georgia team. So that threw them from 4th to what I presume is going to be number 1 for the new college football rankings. So congratulations to Alabama. It's like I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Yeah. Like Dylan said, we're going to jump over to week 5 and the pick'ems. There is a 8-way tie for second with everybody sitting at 25 and 24, including me and you. And we jump into the week 5 picks. And this is just it's not a great college football weekend. There's not a lot of big games. I mean, you see College Game Day going to Cal for the Miami-Cal game. And, that's not my top pick. But, I mean, you've got Miami coming off of a big win, a controversial win, going to Cal to play a Cal team that's been decent this season. So it'll be interesting to see that. But we open up this pick'em with Pitt at North Carolina. Chapel Hill.
Gonna have to, yeah. I think I'm gonna take Pitt. They kind of been seeming to roll. I mean, and again, I can't take a team that let James Madison put up 70 on you. I said that last week. I can't take them.
I was about to say, you look at Pitt, Holstein, 87 to 129, 1,183 yards, 12 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, a 2-to-1 or 6-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, taking care of the ball. I mean, that's what you got to ask. Pitt, the 2.5-point favorite here on the road at Chapel Hill. North Carolina loses their starting quarterback game 1 of the season. They're playing with one of their backups, Jacoby Criswell. They're 3-2. Like you said, Pittsburgh 4-0. I'm with you there. I'm taking the Pitt Panthers. Matchup number 2, you have Boston College playing Virginia. In Charlottesville, Boston College or Virginia, the home team, 2.5-point favorite. 3-1 Virginia, 4-1 Boston College. What do you think?
I'm gonna take Boston College. They've played a selection better of teams. They've played better teams so far, but they've actually been better than what I expected. They play really good defense and offense. I mean, obviously they beat Florida State when they were still ranked. They almost beat Mizzou. Mizzou's not a terrible football team. They have they have a really solid defense, a solid offense, and they're still ranked. I mean, they only lost by it was a 1-score game. So Boston College is actually a better football team than what I thought they were going to be. They're definitely playing better. They're pretty hard nosed and they're really good defensively. So based on that, I think they go in and get the job done at Virginia. So
yeah, I agree. Moving on to an SEC matchup, you have the Missouri Tigers and the Texas A&M Aggies. Yeah,
I'm waiting for it.
I was about to say it was the same story, different year for Arkansas. Unfortunately, last game in Jerry World down in Dallas. I mean, it was a do-over of essentially the Oklahoma State game. Arkansas had the game, and if it's not for turnovers, Arkansas wins this game. 21-17 final for that game. Arkansas falling to A&M, and it's hard to do it when the one crucial fumble to me that gave the edge. You can't fumble it at your own 10 and let the other team get the momentum. I mean, turnovers, Arkansas is shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, that's the highlight of that game. Other than that, we played a decent game.
Yes, you did. And to be honest, I don't even know how Texas A&M is even ranked. To be honest, I understand they're 4-1, but I don't think they're anything incredible. So
yeah, I don't either. You beat McNeese, you beat a bad Florida team, you barely squeaked by Bowling Green. I mean, at that point, it's like, and I'm gonna be real. Arkansas has nothing to write home about this season. I mean, it's so like, yeah, I'm like you. I don't see how they're still up there. I mean, I'm taking Missouri in this one just because I don't like A&M. I think I don't like them more than I don't like Missouri. So, I'm going with the Tigers in this one. It's at Kyle Field, a road game for Missouri. We'll see what Missouri's made of for true road test here in the SEC. We saw them get taken down to the wire at home by Vandy. Well, now they're having to go to Kyle Field. A&M is actually favored by 2 in this game, surprisingly. So
probably home field, But yeah, I got Mizzou too. Hopefully their offense can step it up a little bit. Cook hasn't been the quarterback he was last season, as he is to this season. Only 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He almost has 1,000 yards passing. So he's not quite – the offense doesn't have quite the same offensive production. But their defense is, once again, very stout. But that's like any other SEC team. They have very stout defenses. So I think they get it done. It's probably another close game. Wouldn't surprise me if it goes down to the wire or if it goes to overtime again. But I do think Missouri overall is the more talented team, and I think they probably do just enough to get the win here.
Yeah, agree. Up next, you have the West Virginia Mountaineers headed to Boone Pickens Stadium, Stillwater, Oklahoma, to take on this Oklahoma State team that has 2 straight losses. You got West Virginia coming in 2-2 with a loss to that Pitt team we just talked about earlier, and Penn State early in the season. Of course, Oklahoma State's 2 losses being to Kansas State, Utah. What are you thinking in this game? In Oklahoma State favored by about 6.5.
Yeah, it's in Oklahoma. When you play in Oklahoma, it's a little bit different. I'm going to take Oklahoma State here. I understand they lost 2 straight. I don't see them losing 3 straight. Bowman hasn't quite been the guy I think they expected him to be with being at Oklahoma State for about a century. But he does have over 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, so he does have a little bit of problem taking care of the ball. But I think this game they kind of get Ollie Gordon the second going on the season, and he only has 334 yards and 4 touchdowns, so he's been kind of not himself coming from last season when he had 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns. So I think this is the game that kind of get him going. And I just don't think West Virginia has the front line or a secondary to kind of stop him if he was to get going. And I just kind of think Oklahoma State, once again, bigger football team, bigger program, you're just going to be a little bit more talented than some of these other guys. So I kind of just think that they have more talent. And when push comes to shove, I think that Oklahoma State's probably going to win this one.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like at some point, Ollie Gordon's got to get going this season. 334 yards through 5 games this year. Maybe he got it creeping in his mind a little bit. Maybe I should have went to the draft last year instead of coming back. But he's going to have to really turn it on to get that draft stock. Not saying it's went down a ton, but he hasn't helped himself this season. But if he can get it going in this game, Alan Bowman takes care of the ball. And it being a home game for Oklahoma State, I'm with you there. I think they get the win here in this game. Up next, an interesting matchup. You have the 4-0 Rutgers Scarlet Knights heading to Lincoln, Nebraska to take on the 4-1 Nebraska Cornhuskers and Minnie Mahomes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Nebraska here. Listen, that one loss came to Illinois, all right? And that was, an overtime game in Illinois. Illinois is way better than what we expected. I mean, for God's sake, they're ranked. I know they just kind of got smacked down by Penn State, but before it got a little bit late in that game, I mean, that was a fairly close game, and that was a very defensive game before Penn State kind of just walked away with it towards the end there. You know, and they only won 21-7. And Nebraska, they lost to Illinois. That was their only loss. So I mean, if Nebraska doesn't lose that game, they're probably ranked here. And they're ranked here in Illinois spot. So once again, I think Mini Mahomes here and that team is just a little more talented. I know Rutgers is 4-0 and they got a good team here, but Dylan Raiola, that kid's a little different. That kid's a little different.
I was about to say his season stats: 100 of 142, 1,225 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
Yeah, he's different. Not quite the offensive production touchdown wise, but I still think he's just that talented, and I think Nebraska, like again, push come to shove, I think there's a better football team, so I think they get the win over here over Rutgers.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, even with that one loss coming to Illinois, I think Nebraska still is the better team here. I mean, you look at Rutgers win. They beat Howard. They beat Akron, Virginia Tech, and Washington. Not any really crazy good teams there. You have Nebraska that comes out. They beat UTEP, Colorado, and Purdue, and UNI with that one loss to Illinois. I think, like you said, Nebraska comes out here and gets the win. Next up here, you have Michigan and Washington. Michigan traveling to Seattle. 2.5-point favorite for Washington. Can Michigan pull it off again? Or does Will Rogers, the gunslinging man from the SEC that has over 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns this season, get the job done with Washington?
I really don't want to pick Michigan here, like with all my heart. I just don't. But listen, I'm going to take Michigan until someone can absolutely prove to me that they're willing to, maybe watch a freaking film tape and load the box all game. I'm just going to assume Michigan's going to run over everybody until they play someone who can stop them, because apparently 2 games in a row, apparently the coaches were like, well, we know they can't throw the ball, so they're just going to run. So I guess we don't really need to practice or watch any game film. We can just do whatever we want. And then you just continue to lose to a team that only does nothing but run the football. I mean, literally, it's the same motion like 100 times a game. It's literally that's all they're doing. So I don't know. I'm going to take Michigan. They're probably going to run all over Washington. They've done it 2 games in a row. I don't really see anything changing right now until they face some sort of a defense. So I'm going to take Michigan. I mean, yeah. Mullings probably has another 200 yards rushing. Alex Orji probably has like -5 yards passing, and they win the football game by 3 points. So, I mean, that's probably what's going to happen.
I was about to say, if you look at the previous game with Washington, they lost to Rutgers. They allowed 132 rushing yards in that game.
Oh yeah, you're getting pelted for at least 200. Sorry, guys. I hope you guys win. But if you let Rutgers run for 130 yards, this Mullings guy is going to run all over you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm like you there. I'm gonna follow you there. Michigan, I think, gets the win. Like you said, I'm not gonna. Somebody's got to prove that they can stop this run game, because clearly they're milking the run game and they're lining up and just saying, we're better than you. We're gonna run the football. And like you said, until somebody can stack up that box and force them to beat you with the non-existent passing game, I think Michigan keeps rolling until they run into somebody, like you said, that can do that. So up next, we've got a in-state matchup with UCF headed to the Swamp to take on a 2-2 Florida team, 3-1 UCF. This is has the chance to be an interesting game. Florida, can they kind of, I don't want to say save their season, but they're sitting at 500. Kind of, can they get some momentum, get a win? I don't know.
I really don't want to pick Florida because last time we picked them, they got freaking embarrassed. Actually, every time I've picked them, they've got embarrassed. So, with that being said, I am gonna take Florida. I just think they're one of those teams, man, that if they can get on it, like they're just a very stout defensive team. Like they can get stops, they hit hard, they can score if they really wanted to, but like they can't figure out how to put something together consistently. Like one drive looks really good, and then the next drive, it looks like a toddler's like sitting on the field coloring a piece of paper. Like nothing looks good, So, but I think their defense is better than UCF. I think if their offense can get consistent, like 5 drives in a row, they're probably better than UCF. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I think talent-wise, they're a better football team. I really do. They're just more inconsistent. But I do think Florida gets the win here. I do think they do just enough to get the win.
Yeah. I'm going to take UCF in this one. Give me KJ Jefferson, the former Arkansas quarterback, to go into the swamp and get the win. Like you said, every time I pick Florida, they've let me down. And I'm not sold that, yes, they beat a very bad Mississippi State team, but we've established Mississippi State is bad.
They are bad.
You get manhandled by Miami week 1. You beat Samford that you're supposed to in week 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's another one of those, like we said before with Michigan. Florida proved to me that you can win this game against another Power 5 school. That's UCF's 3-1. They're no slouch. So we'll see what happens there. I'm going to take UCF, see what former Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson can do in the swamp, a guy that went down there and won last year with Arkansas. So he is familiar with the environment. Should be a good game. We'll move over to an ACC matchup with the Duke Blue Devils heading to Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech, the team that we talked about. Kind of shocked everybody at the beginning of the year, which seems to week after week get less impressive.
It is,
to say the least. But this is a Duke team that's 5-0, and they are rolling pretty well so far this season. Malik Murphy, the transfer in from Texas, 1,226 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Haynes King for Georgia Tech, 1,274, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. I'm taking Duke in this one. Everybody really counted them out after Elko left last year. They lost Riley Leonard last year. They lost a few other pieces, but they've seemed to really find a rhythm and find their own here in this season so far, starting off 5-0. You get the talented quarterback from Texas that just, I mean, nobody can blame him for transferring. You're behind Quinn Ewers. You have Arch Manning come in. It's almost like the writing was on the wall, essentially, for him, being like, you're not going to get your chance here, so go somewhere else. And you're seeing what he can do and how talented he can be.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with them. I'm going to take Duke here. Georgia Tech started off really hot, but now they've kind of slimmed down a little bit. I think, again, push comes to shove, Duke's a better football team. Malik Murphy's doing really well. He has 4 turnovers, but he has 12 touchdowns, over 1,200 yards. He's playing really good football. He's taking care of the football for the most part. Their defense is surprisingly better than what I thought it was going to be. And their offense is surprisingly better than what I thought people thought it was going to be, especially with Riley Leonard leaving. So blessing that Malik Murphy came to the Duke Blue Devils, because he's been a saving grace for those guys. So I think Duke keeps it rolling here, and I think they get another win to improve to 6-0. So,
yeah, agreed. We jump over to the college game day game of the week. Not that crazy of an exciting one. You have Miami leaving the East Coast, heading to the West Coast to play Cal in Berkeley. Miami's favored by 2 touchdowns nearly in this game, 13.5. I mean, how do you not pick Miami in this game? I mean, yes, they had a lackluster performance. I hate to use the word lackluster because they played well. There's just no defense in that game, and you have a Cal team that lost to a really bad Florida State team. So,
Yeah, I would say 2 touchdowns is probably an understatement. They probably need to be pushed to like 3. You know, Cam Ward, if the defense can do like 50% of something, right, they're probably going to blow these guys out of the water. Because let's be honest, the reason they were put in that situation against Virginia Tech is because, I'm sorry, Miami Hurricanes fans, your defense was a walking dumpster fire. I mean, it was awful. I mean, it really was. Cam Ward was literally doing everything he possibly could to make sure you guys are going to win a football game. And every time he would do something, your defense was like, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Let's go there and just see what happens. Because Cam Ward is an animal, right? He's probably top 3 in Heisman. Some people like Aaron down here have him as number 1. Some people have his number 2, but I guarantee everybody probably has him in their top 3. Cam Ward on the season, 113 for 161, 70.2% completion percentage, 1,782 yards, 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, averaging 11.1 yards a play. He's rushed for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. So realistically, 20 touchdowns to 4 interceptions on the season total, with almost 1,800 yards passing through 5 games. So, yeah, I would say he's definitely a Heisman contender. So I don't see any reason why I would say he's not going to go out there and do the same thing. He's done it every game. So, yeah, give me Miami to win this game with ease.
exactly, 100%. I'm following you there. Final game, Texas Tech heads to Tucson, Arizona to take on this Arizona team that we just talked about. Arizona is favored by 4 at home.
Give me Arizona here. They're feeling good, right? We just talked about it. They're feeling good, right? They went in there and knocked off number 10 Utah, right? They were ranked about 2 weeks ago before they lost to whoever it was that was unranked. Who did they lose to? They lost to
Arizona actually lost to a Kansas State team.
Kansas State. But they lost to Kansas State. So they lost to Kansas State. You know, they were ranked. They went unranked. But they made a big pickup and came back with a huge win over number 10, right? Utah. I understand Cam Rising wasn't playing, but listen, a win's a win. Doesn't matter who's playing and who's not, right? And you just knocked off the 10th best team, right, in college football. So I think Arizona's feeling good. I think they keep the ball rolling, and I think they get a tough earned win here, though. It'll be tough, but they'll get a win.
I'm going to follow that there. I think Arizona does capitalize on that momentum, gets the win here. But I will say, I think this could be a close game, could be a shootout type game, because you got Texas Tech, Morton, their quarterback, 1,426 yards, 14 touchdowns to 2 interceptions on the season. So they are slinging this ball, Texas Tech, you know, from that kind of spread air raid type of offensive scheming system from, you know, the late Mike Leach. I think it's a close one, but I think Arizona gets the win here and gets the job done to move to 4-1 on the season. That's our pick 'em for the weeks, you guys. You know, other games to potentially keep eye on. UNLV 4-0 after the whole debacle last week, losing their quarterback due to NIL issues. You know, they have their backup running back. Same thing. Say I'm redshirting. I'm done for the season. You know, their backup quarterback comes out and just puts up a game against Fresno State. I mean, I don't think you could ask for much more from UNLV's quarterback Williams. 182 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, 119 yards and a touchdown on the ground. I mean, I don't think UNLV seems to be hurting from the loss of their starting quarterback that led them to a 3-0 start.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, I don't think you really have anyone to blame but yourself. Sluka was a good quarterback, and one of your coaches, that's what I saw. I was thinking like maybe a company had promised him something, to go play at UNLV or whatever. But one of the coaches had offered him like $100,000, only gave him $3,000. So you really can't be mad at the kid. And then I was trying to figure out how that was going to affect, right, him playing or whatever. But he's just going to redshirt. So, and then he said he's going to enter the transfer portal next year. And listen, his stats were really good through 4 games. I mean, the kid was looking really solid. So, that kid could be real dangerous on a certain team.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to lie to you.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. Not a super big week of college football games this week. We went through some good ones. The big one to watch, like we said, Miami's going on the road. They're the game day game of the week. You got the ranked matchup in the SEC with Missouri heading to Texas A&M. We'll see what Michigan does. Can they keep on winning by throwing for minimal passing yards and just running the ball? It should be another great weekend of college football. You don't have anything else, Dylan? We'll get out of here.
No, I have. That's all I got.
I was about to say, stay tuned in, and we'll be back next week to recap week 6 and any of the madness that goes down. As we've already seen through 5 weeks, there's plenty of it, and there's probably not any slowing down. So until next week, hit that like and subscribe button for Variety Sports Network. And we'll see you guys next week.